And welcome back to the Melbourne Catholic website, a brand new year, 2018, and what a way to kick it off with two wonderful Jesuit priests alongside me today, Father Mark Raper and Father Joachim Samento. Mark doing a lot of work in Myanmar at present, and Father Joachim in Timor-Leste. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about what Jesuit mission is all about, how you, as an Australian Catholic or just as a good old Aussie, might like to contribute to the wonderful work that these gentlemen and so many others are doing in two really interesting places. So if it's okay with you, Father Joachim, can I start in Myanmar with Father Mark, who I met at Xavier College a long, long time ago in another world. But you've been in Myanmar now for quite a few years.
I've been visiting for quite a few years, but I've been resident there since last year.
It is in the news a lot. Yeah. And it seems to be for a lot of the wrong reasons, looking from afar. Can you just give us a little overview of what you've struck there since you've been visiting and now resident?
Well, the Rohingya crisis in northern Rakhine State is something of a terrible shame. It's a horrific event. But for people in Myanmar, the Rohingya have never been on their list of the ethnic groups of Myanmar, so somehow you could say that the Burmese people for so long have been denied their own rights. It's hard to recognize the rights of another group, but certainly this is a horrific moment for...
And these are effectively, if I'm right, Muslims being driven out of the country? Is that accurate?
The fact that they're Muslims is incidental to the fact of their ethnicity.
I see.
As is the case in most of the seemingly religious conflicts. They're really difficulties with inter-ethnic difficulties.
So, as the various religions go into the bucket in Myanmar, is it very much oil and water, or is there some sort of mix between them?
There's National Day, Union Day. There is an attempt, and in our schools we have run a number of institutes for higher education. You see Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, and people from Kachin or Chin or Shan mixing very happily. For them it comes naturally. It's as everywhere, I suppose. This discrimination or racism is something that's learnt, and so far the young Burmese people, they don't have it.
That's wonderful.
If they can be in an environment, we'll be teaching English, but they leave our institutions with more than English, you could say.
What about the percentage of the population that might be Christian or Catholic? Are we talking a real minority?
Tiny. There are 700,000 Catholics in a country of 56 million people.
Right, so
it's tiny. But there are 16 dioceses, so we're spread. There are organizations across the country that are Catholic, and services also. Unfortunately, all the mission schools were taken from the church in the 60s when the Ne Win dictatorship began. So we're not at the moment much in education, and that's our challenge now. We've gone into teacher education precisely because of the service for the country is now to lift the quality of education.
Well, I'll come back and ask you in a moment what you're actually doing there in Myanmar at the moment. But I'm really interested because the Pope's just been there.
Yeah.
Now, that must have been quite an experience for the people of the country and for yourselves.
It was wonderful, and wonderful for us as Jesuits because he wanted to meet with us.
Yes.
Much to the embarrassment, really, because the diocesan priests or the other religious didn't have the same access to him. But it was wonderful. When we were talking with him, one of our fathers said to him, "Holy Father, these people have sacrificed a lot to come to see you." There was one woman who travelled for 3 days, raised money for 6 months to be able to come.
Goodness.
But I can assure you she's going home happy because she saw you. And of course for him then it was quite amazing because he was just somehow he said, "I'm ashamed." And I started to get a bit worried, but he said, no, he said, St. Ignatius tells us to ask for shame because that keeps us focused. He said, the faith of these people who want to come to see Peter, as he put it,
Yes.
Gives me faith, helps my faith, helps me to know what my proper place is too in serving people. And so the whole meeting went on for an hour and a half like this, where he was sharing quite personally and where we were talking about the lives of the Burmese people that we know and meet, and he was responding to them. Beautiful.
Is conversation comfortable? Is there a translator? How does it roll?
Oh yes, he was speaking Spanish.
Yes.
And there was a fellow who was born in Granada, Monsignor, for whom English and Spanish are and Italian. So sometimes there was a bit of Italian, sometimes
Yes.
Spanish. Yeah, but he came into the room, and the room was set up with a chair up there for him and us down here. First thing he did was pull the chair right down so that he was close to. He said, "I don't want to be far away from you."
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, he's an 81-year-old man. It was a heavy chair, but so people rushed to help him. But it was just nice, you know. It was in the family, but his impact on the country, I would say, was phenomenal. That someone of his standing, as an international leader, should choose Myanmar, you know, to choose to come to Myanmar, and the people, because when it had been suggested, the response from the government and from Aung San Suu Kyi
Yes.
came immediately that yes, you're welcome to come to visit us.
And it obviously just wasn't the 700,000 Christians who were wanting to see him.
That's right. It had an impact on everybody, and you know, this is a moment where interreligious dialogue is very important, because Burma has lived within ethnic enclaves for all this time of the suppression of the dictatorship. But now civil society is growing, people are starting to talk to one another. So there are many Burmese Buddhist people who are ashamed at the Mabata, the radical group that's much more vocal. But it's not in the Buddhist way to be vocal like that. The Buddhist way is to be quiet, at peace with everybody. So there are genuine Buddhists who are ashamed at that. And this came out in the encounter with the Pope, with the Sangha, the leadership.
Yes.
This came out. They said that it's against this violence and conflict is against our religion. But within the country, for generations, the military have been funding a leadership within the Buddhists that would support ethnic nationalism, basically.
Was there a view when he departed that between he and Aung San Suu Kyi there might have been at least a modicum of progress, or is that just not going to happen in such a short time?
Look, this problem was decades, generations in the creation, and the Pope was there 3 days.
Yes.
So you can't expect that he could solve the Rohingya crisis like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he, you know, the whole view of the military and the economic enterprises has been towards investment and all of that. So the fact that there was a person of his moral standing there put the discourse on a very different level.
Interesting.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Very, very much.
Well, I want to
and he said everything, you know, that needed to be said. Even his speech was somehow in code, you could say. It didn't speak directly didn't say there's no finger wagging or anything, but it was very clear what he was talking about.
We're going to talk about what the Jesuits are doing in Myanmar and then also in Timor-Leste. But as you listen to Father Mark, and you'll hear from Father Joachim shortly, maybe you've been inspired to maybe support the Jesuit mission, because it's a wonderful organisation doing quite terrific things. So how would people donate?
We've come
Father
here,
Mark.
the reason we're here actually, we were at a meeting that we both had to attend in Sydney, but we've come basically to meet people who've been supporting us, and they support us through Jesuit Mission Australia, and that's our key partner, and that's the channel who help us to identify what are the clear priorities, and then help the donors. They're like a switchboard, you could say, that connects people who want to help with the needs, and so Jesuit Mission Australia is easily to find them.
So on a website, just Jesuit Mission Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
So look, there'll be plenty of donors that you'll be thanking, but I think where we're talking here, there's a whole lot of maybe new people who might like to put up their hand and help as well. So Jesuit Mission Australia, I'll remind you again, perhaps when we finish our chat. So what are you actually doing in Myanmar? What are the projects that are up and running or about to start?
Well, the Jesuits have been back in Myanmar. We were there before, but when foreigners had to leave, they left. We were running the seminary in the 50s and 60s, and some of the bishops who were our students, interestingly, came and asked us to come back at this point. So we've been there for nearly 20 years again, and now we're working on foundations. Foundations of personnel, forming people, including our young Jesuits, of whom we've got almost 30 young Jesuits, already 3 priests and 1 coming up for ordination in a couple of weeks.
So they would all be from Myanmar?
All Myanmar
Wonderful.
citizens.
Yep.
And then foundations in the sense of putting the institutions in place from which we will serve people. So retreat house, reflection centre, Institute of Higher Learning, the Myanmar Institute for Leadership, a range of projects like that, a community college in the slums. These are the things we're building up now.
And the people working in these places, I assume there's some Jesuits, but I assume you also have perhaps volunteers coming to assist?
Volunteered, but also Burmese people who we help to form and train and who are working with us.
And they move on then. So of all those different places, give us a little snapshot of a couple of them, maybe the community college, for instance.
Community college is very inspiring. There would be there'll be 8 or 9 of the students who are actually Rohingya. They don't have identity papers, and several of them had done a university degree. On the day they were to graduate, they were told, you can't graduate because you don't have identity papers. They've done the full degree.
Wow.
So there's a lot of these people have difficulty getting jobs now. So a number of businesses, among them some quite important Muslim people who are running businesses, have taken them on as employees 2 or 3 days a week, and we have them in the school 2 or 3 days a week.
Okay.
So they're learning office skills, they're learning accounting, filing, all of these things, and after a year of this, they'll get employment with these companies.
Wonderful. And obviously a lot of training occurring of potential priests of the future, possibly teachers as well.
Oh yes. We've put a priority, support to the local church and education and the development of the social services of the church. The church has been very importantly focused on pastoral activities for its own communities, various local communities, but now they have, especially they saw after Cyclone Nargis in 2008, the possibility to serve the whole people, to serve whoever they are, from marginal communities especially.
Well, we've had a very good look at Myanmar, and Mark, thank you.
Yeah.
We've still got a few minutes up our sleeve. Father Joachim, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm hearing there's 2 main projects in East Timor, maybe 3 overall. Can we talk about those a little? The first one in Dili, is that correct?
Yeah, that is. So the community of the Jesuits in East Timor, to the small number that we have these 3 centers of activities. In Dili, we have our main house where we run the governance of the region. We have a house of audiovisual production. We have the Jesuit Social Service Office and many other initiatives, especially those who are involved in the activities of the Diocese of Healy. We also have one up in the hills, a parish. It has been elevated a parish last year only, but the Jesuits were sent there already at the beginning of the independence, so more than 16 years ago, where we have a parish, and under the parish we have a school, a high school, we have a mobile clinic, we have a feeding program for children, and since last year the bishop has elevated this Railaco to be a parish, and now we try to elaborate better our contribution to the country, specifically through this region in Railaco. Another one is down a bit out of city to the west in Kasait in Olmera, where we have our Jesuit education project. We have two different institutions there. One is a college for year 7 to 12.
Yes.
Which this year we'll have our first graduation. Actually, it was started in 2012.
Wonderful.
And another one is an institution, is a teachers training institute, because we believe that we can contribute a lot to the education as the program of the country, of the government, through education to establish this teachers training school, because with this we can really help to raise the quality of the schools, because if we have good teachers, we have good schools. And through this institution we have various other initiatives. We have a help center,
Yes.
which attends to the sick students or our people of our neighborhood, but also is a place meant to promote health education in the neighborhood, to help people how to live healthier, how to promote a healthy environment. We have also various other social initiatives in that area, and we are working together with different parts, especially with several religious congregations that has been part of our project since the beginning.
Well, look, I've got a million questions I could ask you, but I've only got time for probably 3 or 4.
Yes.
So my first question is, firstly, how long have you been there?
Well, I'm myself is an East Timorese, but I have been
working there with the Jesuits. How long have you been working there with the Jesuits?
Well, I have been a Jesuit for 30 years.
Yes.
This year, and but I have done my whole formation outside the country. I've been back since the beginning of the independence, since 1999.
So you've really seen all this blossom in front of your very eyes. That's wonderful, and must be something you're immensely proud of.
Yes, yes. And thanks to Father Mark himself, he has been the last 6 years the superior in East Timor, from whom I took over this role as regional superior. But under his vision, his leadership, we were able to establish these institutions, and we hope to contribute more to the country itself and in the future.
So what have been the biggest challenges? Say around, let's talk about the school and the teacher training facility. That must have been interesting to start it from scratch, and now you're seeing the first graduating year, some 6 or 7 years later.
Yeah.
That must be fantastic.
Yes, there's a feeling of gratitude to what we have reached, but especially to all friends, partners and donors, especially from Australia, who has been, let's say, our biggest donor in these projects so far. And this feeling of gratitude we would like to extend to everybody who has been part of this.
But I've got to be a tough interviewer here, Joachim. What have been the biggest challenges? You haven't really told me yet. What were the challenges as you tried to bring this to fruition?
Well, apart from the burden, let's say, of the history we keep on bringing with us, which is, let's say, what touches the conflicts, the roots of conflicts, and the need of reconciliation. In education itself, I would say it's more a mentality. I mean, people need to believe that this is the way we can improve, and that we need to put on our efforts, personal efforts, and our national resources to really do that. So we need to believe that this is the way we can improve how life and the people to live more intensely, let's say.
So when independence came along, can you remember what you thought might happen in the years ahead? And do you look now and say, wow, look how far we've come? Or do you have a different view?
Well, we certainly have a big dream at the beginning of the independence, and this is coming now. But I also have to say that we are still struggling, especially in putting all the basic structures of the country and to really make it works or function as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And but fruits are coming out now.
And I asked Father Mark a similar question about Myanmar. In Timor and Dili, what sort of a population are we talking about in terms of Christian and Catholic?
That's a big difference with Myanmar. We are only 1.2 million, but let's say 95% are Catholics. So
yes,
we have a different. We are quite well support by the government or by the church itself, because practically those all you serve are Catholics. So that's the number.
And have you seen their vision for, a future world for Timor change in that time?
I would say that I think looking at the dynamics, the progress that we have reached so far, I think I have a lot of hope that better things will come, better results will come in the future. That certainly would need much more work, putting the right preference, the right efforts, and collaborate among us and collaborate with the government, because the church is the most important partner of the government in East Timor to run all these activities. If we can put all this together, put aside all the differences, I think many good things are coming ahead.
Well, that's wonderful. And can that happen?
I'm sure it will.
Excellent, excellent. It's been great chatting to you, Father Joachim.
Thank you.
And if I may just finish with Father Mark.
Yes.
Well, wonderful hearing that story about Timor,
Yes,
which
yes.
obviously you've been a significant part of.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd sort of add or
No,
broaden
I'd
on?
reinforce what Father Joachim was saying, that at independence, the people had suffered so much trauma. Hardly a family had been untouched by violence or by conflict. So to build trust and to build the capacity to work together, even among ourselves as within the church or Jesuits, has been so important. And then I suppose to set a target, like building a school now which is going to take in the two institutions over 1,000 people, it was almost unimaginable. It'll take too long, I suppose, but I remember a story one of our young men told me. He was teaching a class of self-knowledge. It was part of religion. At a moment, he looked around the room and the children were all crying because he'd been asking them to remember their childhood. Every one of them was crying. He said, then it dawned on him, these children have grown up knowing violence. And so the challenge is how a people can be together and trust one another and build the country.
Given that history.
And given that history.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's happening. It's beautiful.
It's actually a magnificent story.
Yeah.
I've got one last question. A very Catholic country, as Father Joachim explained.
Yeah.
The Jesuits have a very unique way of bringing their view of God and Jesus to people. Was there any sort of a culture clash to try and bring that when the Jesuits arrived, or was it just seemingly natural?
No culture clash exactly in regard to the Jesuits, because we've been part of the history of Timor for over 100 years. But the culture clash is probably that Christianity didn't always penetrate so deeply. Timor has maybe 200 priests or something, I don't know the exact number, about 200 priests, and 1 million Catholics. Myanmar has 700,000 Catholics and 700 priests. So in a normal parish, for a normal parish will be 10 or 12,000 people with one priest. So
mind-boggling.
So to get, for the people to get the sacraments, the people to be instructed, to be truly understand the faith in a society which has had very strong traditional practices of the presence of the spirits and whatever. So the penetration of the Catholic really understand. They're loyal, they profess to be Catholic, but in terms of practice and engagement, it's still taking time. That's where the clash is, you could say.
Sure. Yeah. Now, you've picked up perfectly on what I was trying to get at. Maybe I didn't ask it very clearly, but that's a great answer. Father Joachim and Father Mark, many thanks for your great honesty and the way you've been able to tell just quite a wonderful story of the terrific work that Jesuit Mission is doing. And I did promise Helen that we would mention again how people can donate. So it's simply go to the website, Jesuit Mission Australia. And I hope over the last 20 minutes or so, some of what you've been hearing has maybe prompted you to help out this fantastic work. So thank you, and safe trips back to your respective countries.
Thank you.